Hey, this is Dave Noonan. Thank you so much for watching. In today's video, we're going to talk a little bit about what it really means when we hear, as life science training folks, we don't have time for training from our audience, primarily folks in the field and their leadership. And if you haven't heard that exact phrase in a while, we don't have time for training, it's pretty possible that you've heard something like, we need to keep people in the field, therefore, we don't want or don't need training. Or maybe, hey, it's the blank of the blank. We need to focus on selling right now. So we don't need or don't want to do some kind of training initiative. And while I definitely understand the spirit of where this is coming from, I was a rep in the field, I was a manager. It does make me chuckle a little bit because the reality is we all have time. A simple look at our calendars or how we spent our time, the screen count provider on our iPhone, we all have time to learn. So the very premise of we don't have time for training, I think, is not accurate. I think we all can agree to that. The second thing that makes me laugh a little bit is most training today is already field focused, meaning the days of a training initiative being presented that takes people out of the field for extended periods of time is very limited. And most training I see being created out there is training that can be consumed in the field, sometimes very much in the flow of work. And so certainly that can't be the full issue. And then the one that I think we all have to grasp here is that it's sales training. It's in its very nature meant to improve selling and sales and efforts that are happening in the field. And so if we all have time, if the training is largely field focused, meaning it's not taking people out of the field, and it's sales training, what are they actually trying to tell us? It can't be just that. And so here's three quick things that they're actually telling us that can hopefully let us prepare and be more effective going forward. So, number one, hey, life science trainer Dave, your training is not application relevant. It might be relevant, meaning it is related to a topic that is happening in the field, that it's been discussed that we should learn more about or know more about. However, it may not be application relevant, meaning it's not absolutely clear how I'm going to take this information and use it in my day-to-day job. And there's two ways that can show up. First is in the design, of course, of the training. If the training's not designed in such a way that the learning outcomes are intended to be things that your audience can take and use immediately in the field, that can definitely cause pushback and be showing up in our, hey, we don't have time for training pushback. But it can also be from a communication standpoint. If we're not clear as designers of training how the learning can or should be used for application in the field, for the flow of work, then that can also cause that pushback or perhaps that disconnect to our work. And so, a question that we can be asking ourselves as we get into the development of training is this training designed for the sales team to put into practice right away? And have I communicated how upfront, including in that very pitch up front when you're trying to get people on board to support your initiative? Is that clear right away? And if we need some additional ammunition, Malcolm Knowles, our favorite inventor of or pioneer around adult learning, his concept or principle of readiness to learn is all related to relevance. As adult learners, relevance is one of the keys to our being ready to learn. So let's go ahead and make sure that's created to improve the chances we don't hear that we don't have time for training. Okay, number two, life science trainer Dave, your training is too long and unfocused. This is definitely a reason we could be hearing we don't have time for training if the perception is it's too dang long and it is not focused, don't have time for it. A couple of reasons that happens, or I see that it happens. One is clarity of objectives. So if we're not clear, maybe it should say lack of clarity around objectives. If we're not clear on what our objectives are in the learning program, whatever modality it happens to be in, there happens to be a tendency, or there is a tendency for that training to perhaps be unfocused or to go on too long. And connected to that is the content itself then becomes unfocused. Instead of being dialed in on the what we must know to be application relevant and useful in the field, things can get quite long. And so the question we can ask going into a training initiative is this training focused and clear in its design so that it provides the field just the information they need to go and have impact with customers. No more and no less. Now, I can hear what you're saying right now, Dave. You don't understand my stakeholders. You don't understand my med-legal process. They inject themselves into my projects and things balloon and change, and everybody wants everything in these modules and workshops. Completely understand it is the herding of cats that we all do have to deal with, but that's a huge awareness and something we can be working toward to ensure that we keep things focused and very much on task. So understood, and something we all can be working toward better management of. And finally, 3, life science trainer. Dave, your training is not engaging. This could again be a reason why we are hearing that we don't have time for training, because it is not engaging. And there's a couple of reasons or ways we can think about engagement. And the first we've already talked about, and that is if it's not engaging from the standpoint of application relevance, i.e., I don't see how this helps me go do my job better right away, there can certainly be a perception that there's no time for it. We can't use it. We don't need it. We don't want it. And then the other way is one that we think of maybe more commonly with engagement, and that is attention. We operate in an attention economy. We operate in an environment today where we're not just competing with the last training program we created, we're competing with everybody's phone and what's on Netflix and what's in the world around us. We have to find ways to be as engaging as possible to bring people in and connect them to our information so that we don't hear, in fact, that they don't have time to consume it and go through that training program. The question, what format can I design this learning in so that it optimally holds the sales professional's attention and the learning objectives can be accomplished? Application relevance, that's been a theme throughout that can absolutely help us when it comes to understanding how to overcome this objection if we don't have time for training. And folded into this is, of course, the question of technology. To tech or not to tech, that is a question. It's not the question, but it is a question. Technology can be a part of how we create engaging training. There are lots of ways today that we can find to do that, and that's probably a whole nother video in and of itself. Or not to tech. There's certainly ways not leveraging technology that can allow us to create really strong engagement. So that's an important question to consider as well. So in summary, what do they really mean, our stakeholders in the field and field leadership, when they say, I'm sorry, life science trainer, I do not have time for training, or we need people in the field, sorry, we have to focus on selling? What they're saying is, can you please make sure that if we do training, that it's application relevant, that it's actually helping us do our jobs better immediately after consuming that training? 2, can you make sure that it's right sized, that it's focused, and it's clear in its objectives, and certainly not too long? And lastly, can you please make it engaging? We have folks in the field being pulled in a million different directions. If we engage them, we know that we can keep them involved. So thank you so much for watching. If you have questions about this, please send me a comment. If you disagree, I would love to hear that as well. And if you have anything to add about how we can overcome this objection of we don't have time for training, I would love to hear it. Thank you so much, and we'll see you in the next video.